we're gonna talk a little bit about. Well, obviously, the niche of the Claymation channel is that the very Claymation channel that this is the Claymation channel, but Crosswind for that matter. There's going to be a bit of a back and forth tug I'm gonna have with Claymation niche downing and the variety content to purge or not even purge anymore. There's a big gambit with that. It's like not Destiny 2 gambit, but like a tug of war between will I make my variety content out of passion or humble myself to conform to Claymation content because I know it'll help people and even myself. And the war between those two things, or even the negotiation of those things. We're gonna talk about a little bit about this on this Crosswind video. So I have to explain that for months and years on end because of the digs march off to custom divisions on my alts YouTube channels. Also, often mentioned before, the Move podcast will hopefully already have been niched as well back into Claymation formally, and not just for the parts from the 4-part thing. But the variety content always gets my tug on. Like some people misunderstand what I mean when I say I don't like quality content or that I don't like making Claymation, as far as that's been misjudged for both the toxic relationship I had with creativity and Claymation alone. But knowing that I've actually had a weird geist with quality content, a weird geist with Claymation. People think that Claymation is my passion. It never was. It was something that I most liked to do. I enjoyed the fact that I could be good at it because it is my talent. I don't deny that I'm good at it. I don't deny that I'm good at cartooning, but or Claymation, but stop motion animation. But it's something that I come to the point where I'm like, I do enjoy doing this, but it's not what people think it is. It's like it never comes across as I'll only do Claymation to grow my channel, or I'll only do Claymation to make people's lives better, or give them some kind of satisfaction. But it just it comes across like, oh, there's no reason I should be complaining as long as I like it, because I never liked it. So but that's not why I'm complaining though. It's like it's not because of the anti-passion, but it's like it's always been an interference with, you guessed it, variety content, and the things that either inhibit the growth of the channel or make it so that I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Because I actually, not the right content per se, or even the Claymation, but not either or of the blame. But the things that make it so I don't understand where, if variety content is something I'm passionate about doing without necessarily having to grow the channel, if even at all, then that's been its own problem by itself. I've made a handful of videos before about whether or not I would do more Claymation and whether or not I would do more variety content and back and forth tugs of these things. I've never had a formal confrontation or even a decision made about these things because I never had to. If you look back at the very beginning of a lot of Crosswind, you know that I didn't even start with Claymation. Even though I niched down on Claymation, and there were times where back and forth, I would niche down Claymation, people would think I was doing variety content. I would do variety content, and people would say, oh, he's an animator of doing Claymation. That's obvious proof of that. Like, it's but not, they didn't mean that directly. I just kind of threw that in their mouth. But, like, it was like it's this thing where I could do video editing on this later if I want to, but unfortunately I'm not the kind of person who does that apparently. So because variety content, nah. But it's weird because the thing with the beginning of the channel was that it was starting off with occult memes. It was occult magic and astrology and philosophy and spirituality, and not so much religion, but spiritual aspects, law of manifestation, you name it, all the other stuff. It was going to develop the top point anyways, but like it was occult magic memes and occultist memes and occult memes and memes in general, which what Marchcraft would have developed in its own way, with the Aggers and Anarchy video essays, which I didn't mention as much on this channel because I didn't want to get flagged for anything else on other YouTube channels. Even though Marchcraft in itself has a YouTube and a BitChute channel, but I could even make an Odyssey for that one. But Diggs was its own, like all these channels have their own approaches, and now you have a reason for doing them a certain way. Not even for different fields of topics, which I made videos about why I don't like topics and focusing. But I definitely had to get into the human game of that. Thank you, Rich Walt. But how it was going to be like factions instead of styles of fields, or styles of factions, and different fields of my personality and non-linear thinking. And it was going to be like, okay, so Marshcraft is going to have the shit that I can't talk about here. Diggs is going to have the stuff that I want to do here, but I need to make sure I understand what it is first. And then Tony Cashman's going to be everything else that's outside of that, even though that's starting with what I should have done the entire time, ever since YouTube began. And it's like, yeah, to be more empathetical about that, our Crosswind is supposed to be a Claymation channel, right? Maybe. But then we have, the other three, which are like my factions, not my niche fields, but my factions for other kinds of content. They're not even like live stream VODs and memes and stuff. It's like it's a little different from even that. It's like it's more. It's I don't want to brag and say it's too much different, but too many different grammar Stanley. That these alternate YouTube channels would have to be necessary for me to understand what it's like to be a true content creator, and not just the kind who doesn't know how to even be human or be consumerist. Because people have a negative connotation with consumerism. They depict that consumerism is bad because you don't want to never be creating, not let alone if even related content creation. You never want to be someone who's never building up from what they take. That which bears truth. And they also say that you don't want to have to be so in your comfort zone you never grow and develop, which again, law of manifestation kind of stuff. Doesn't have to be like that spiritual, but other context. That's why they villainify consumerism, because they want you to understand that you don't have to be creating. Because I was going to mention Steven Spielberg earlier, because that was going to be both for and against this argument, because I'm a contrary philosopher, I guess. But the idea that my point was, I believe in consumerism because I want to believe in a world where people can be themselves in spite of learning how to grow and evolve and do things for other people and not just themselves, in spite of that. But they have to learn how to be themselves first. They have to live in the moment and know what's going on in the present time, not before or after, but in the present timeline. Not waiting until they're 7 years old to be awake in the conscious sense, and then like in their mid to late 20s, like me, to be like, oh, so I really did do everything right, apparently. So, but it was like, but not being necessarily conscious in all those other years, even behind year 7, let alone year 25 to 26 and further. And it's like, yeah, that sounds really deep and philosophical on a Claymation channel, doesn't it? As far as the Claymations that were supposed to have storylines that were deep and philosophies that were deep in their ideas. For a stop motion animation channel, right? That's too deep. If even necessary. It's necessary sometimes, or even most of the time, or all the time. According to me, apparently. But it's a Claymation channel that's niched down on Claymation, so why would I have to talk like this? But I have to still be myself, regardless of whether I make content creation in any fashion that was supposed to be a certain kind of context or not. Or concept or not. Damn, Warrior's gone in my head with this. With all the other shit. Not just the current side stuff, but as many years other people have. But, not that I never learned that lesson, but it's a different kind of thing. I'm going to just say that I will still make varied content. It may not be here. It might still be here. I'll definitely make Claymation. I'm not giving up on that. That's back pocket with or without the things I learned from it or had to resolve from the trauma. But hear me out on this one. Whether my Claymations include variety ideas or philosophies or creative things that people may not even resonate with stop motion or animation in general or creativity, the arts, whatever, the cartoonings, animations, anime. It doesn't have to resonate like that too easily or even over time. I make Claymation because I know they can help people, including myself. I know that foremost it should be at least for myself and then the other people maybe, if possible. But I don't usually think like that at first. Not just from the trauma, not just from the tragedy of not knowing how this works. The variety content has become its own outlet. I've never had to understand anything differently than trying to multitask out of passion of its own side. And how to make sure that even if I knew if I learned how to focus as appropriately necessary, over time, learning how to focus and channel my energy into things that matter to me or even matter in general. And making sure that I have a truly peaceful way of approaching my life, whether it's simple or not, or complex, not complicated, anything like that. This again sounds too deep, but this is a Claymation channel. Wait, that's not the point. It's nice though, because I made variety content on this channel. I didn't have to, but I did, and it's a whole backlog of memoirs, Hank Green style memoirs, John brothers, Hank and John Vlog brothers. If you want to watch them for a little bit, they have over 1 million subs at this point, so maybe even over 2 million. And the Hank brother made a really good point about having memoirs out of videos, even if they're not perfect, because it doesn't matter that perfect is still you. They're never gonna deny that, even if you're still lying out in front, but. Hank's point was that if you have a memoir log of who you are, even if it has nothing to do with who you think you are, it still helps. And that is why I particularly look at my own channel, Crosswind. And I look at that, I'm like, well, this looks like crappy content. I don't think it is. That makes it confusing to you, I'm sorry, but I think it's good content, but I don't have to see it that way. And it's like, I find it that it is a good backlog, even if it's not the content I thought I was gonna make, even for vlog style stuff. Crappy content in that regard as well, or not lowbrow. I have to demean it even on accident, but looking at the content I made peacefully and happily, that wasn't supposed to be off editing, not always at least. Things that I made that were like, well, that's a lot of good memoir and vlog style stuff. I didn't ask questions or do things I thought I would, but at first, at least, even starting out, but even when starting out, I didn't do that right away, or even later on, over time, longevity. I didn't have to approach it like that, but there was a lot of good material that was there that on that term was good enough for me. And it didn't make me feel bad that I was stalling on claymation that I could be making, or that I was stalling on at least maybe even choosing varied content instead of claymation if I really felt that way, even then. But do I regret being a claymation animator? No. Do I regret making varied content and slowing down my growth on YouTube? No. Do I regret being myself and still trying to make sure that I learn how to be playing the human game the way it's necessary so that I can eventually see if there is a reason I should be breaking the human game? Because as you grow and evolve as the so-called starseed. I'm not saying I don't believe in that, but just you actually have to make sure that you're playing by these rules before you try to break them. Because if the breaking of them is the purpose of some of this, learning how to play the human game inevitably will be a good thing anyways, because it has some aspect of knowing how to be a better person to grow and evolve by itself. And then if you do get to break the rules of the human game to change and develop it, that will be great, but you don't go there first. You have to make sure you play by these rules. My point as a claymation animator and a variety content passion doer, rather than a passion for claymation instead of just a talent, is that I will do what it takes for me to grow and evolve, even if I don't do it as necessarily necessary.